So what if I told you that hidden beneath all the terrifying clowns and haunted hotels, Stephen King has a secret blueprint? And no, it's not for building monsters. It's a blueprint for the hidden architecture of our own minds. Let's dive in and see what it actually reveals.
You've probably heard this famous piece of advice from King, but it's actually a clue. See, writing with the door closed isn't just about getting some privacy. It's about getting into a unique mental state, a kind of workshop where the subconscious and the conscious mind can meet and start drawing up the plans for his stories.
I mean, we've all been there, right? Yelling at a character in a King story, "Don't go in that room." They make these awful, self-destructive choices over and over again. But what if they aren't really choices at all? What if there's a deeper force, this emotional architecture, that's actually pulling all the strings?
Okay, so to understand that architecture, we first have to step into the workshop where it's made. And this isn't a physical place with tools and sawdust. It's a state of mind King gets into, a process that taps into something really fundamental about how our brains build stories in the first place.
It all starts in what you could call a waking dream. King talks about this all the time. He'll just see a single bizarre image, a car that eats people, or a sand dune that can predict when someone will die. These are things that just bubble up from his subconscious, and his job is to apply just enough focus to wrestle that dream logic into a real story.
Now, this whole process involves two very different mental states. On one side, you have that free-flowing, anything-goes vibe of daydreaming. There's this model, the Brain Kinematics Model, that describes this as weak, high-frequency energy. Then on the other side, you have focused, logical thought, a nice, coherent flow. The real genius of Stephen King is his ability to jump back and forth between these two, grabbing raw, weird material from the dream state and then shaping it with his conscious, logical mind.
So if that's the workshop, what's the actual blueprint? Well, it's something we can call emotional architecture. And here's the big idea. The powerful feelings you get when you're reading his stories, they are not accidents. They are built deliberately and carefully, brick by emotional brick.
And here's the crucial part. A big, powerful climax emotion, like pure terror or profound guilt, is never just one thing. It's always a complex structure, built on a foundation of smaller, supporting, subsidiary emotions. It's kind of like a skyscraper, right? The feeling that hits you at the very end is only held up because of the deep, complex foundation that was built underneath it.
Let's see how this actually works. Take his short story Morality. The climax emotion isn't just a simple feeling of guilt. It's a very specific kind of guilt that's built on a foundation of temptation and desperation and even resentment. Or look at Obits, where that final feeling of horror is supported by the character's initial curiosity and his sense of power. Every single layer adds depth and makes that final gut punch feeling so much stronger.
You can actually visualize this complexity. An emotion like guilt in King's universe is incredibly dense. It's often built on 5 or more of these subsidiary layers, which makes it way more structurally complex than, say, grief. This isn't just storytelling, it's a kind of emotional engineering.
Which brings us right back to our central mystery. If emotions are these complex, pre-built structures in the story, what does that mean for the characters who are making choices inside of them? Who or what is really in control?
Well, that brain kinematics model we mentioned has a pretty provocative answer. It defines will not as some commander in your head making the decision, but as the observable outcome, the final direction of all these competing emotional and memory forces that are pushing and pulling inside the mind.
I absolutely love this analogy. Will isn't the captain of the ship. It's more like the wave that pops up for a second on the surface of a really turbulent ocean. It's what emerges from the chaos. It's a temporary shape formed by all that energy swirling underneath. It looks like a single, solid thing, but really, it's just a momentary pattern.
And we see this all through his stories. In Morality, the characters think they're making a conscious choice, but it's really their hidden greed and their emotional fatigue that's making it for them. In The Dune, the judge's obsession isn't a choice, it's a compulsion that he just dresses up as reason. Their will is just the visible tip of a very, very deep emotional iceberg.
Okay, so why does he do this? Why build these elaborate emotional structures and run these experiments on his characters, and by extension, on us, the readers? Well, according to this theory, it serves a really profound psychological purpose, one that actually mimics a core function of our own brains.
Let's compare King's stories to our actual dreams for a second. Our dreams, well, they just kind of bubble up unconsciously to help us regulate our emotions. They follow this weird associative logic. King's stories, on the other hand, are consciously designed. They follow a narrative logic. Their goal is to communicate an idea, but they do it by tapping into that exact same dreamlike function.
And this reveals the grand design. Storytelling, especially horror, is basically a safe, controlled simulation of our brain's own subconscious maintenance program. It lets us process and balance these incredibly powerful emotional energies without having to actually live through the terrifying thing ourselves.
The whole process follows this clear pattern. First, a story introduces some kind of disturbance, a haunted car, a deal with the devil. Then it cranks up the tension, building that emotional architecture we talked about. And finally, it provides a resolution, whether it's good or bad, that allows all that built-up emotional energy to discharge, leaving our minds in a state of balance. Catharsis.
So when you get right down to it, Stephen King isn't just a storyteller. He's more like a psychological engineer, and he's running what you could call emotional kinematic experiments. He builds these complex structures of feeling, he places characters inside them, and he shows us how the currents of emotion and memory will inevitably shape their destiny and ours.
And this all leaves us with a really fascinating final thought. If stories are a kind of technology that our brains use to find balance, to process things like fear and guilt and regret in a controlled way, it really makes you wonder, what kind of story does your mind need to hear right now?